Hey everyone, it's Chala from PS I Love You. Thanks so much for stopping by today. Today's video is in coordination with the Scrap and Stamp February blog hop. It's Some Like It Hot. I will leave all the information in the description box below and you can check that out. So I'm using the Lawn Fawn Love You a Latte, and I'll be using the cup and the tea bag as well as the little heart. I'll start out by making my background here. I'm using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I'm going to do some Copic coloring. And I just kind of quickly lay these out here. I'm not the best at making backgrounds, it's something that I need to practice, but I kind of start off on the left, work my way to the right, and then I come back on the left to fill in any of the areas. I will be trimming this background down as well with a rectangle die, so I'm not overly worried on how things kind of line up. I'll bring in this tea bag here, just filling in some of those large white areas between the teacups, and just rotating the tea bag just to give it some interest so it doesn't all look exactly the same. And then once I get this done, there were still some kind of white areas I didn't really love, so I brought in that little tiny heart, and I will just again fill in some of those larger white areas. And then once I get that all filled up, I am going to bring in my Copic colors. Now, I am not the best Copic colorer. I'm still learning myself. Someone to really look at is actually Kelly Latavola. She's amazing, so I recommend her. I'll actually just do a couple of these images just to show you what I'm doing. I had the colors listed on the top left there for you. And I work lightest to darkest and then back to lightest again for my colors. So just laying down this beautiful blue-green here. And this is the light color. I'm going to bring in the darker blue-green there just to give it some shading. And I'm doing a flicking motion, and I find it best to kind of turn my work when I'm doing that. And then I will bring back that lighter color again to blend it all together. So that's basically what I did for my coloring for the cup itself. Now inside the tea portion, I'm going to be using an E37. I could have used a couple different colors to give it more shading, but I just wanted to keep coloring really simple as there was a lot to do, and I just used one color for the tea. I'll bring in my E11 for the tea bag itself, and just again one color. And then for the heart, I'm bringing in the RV34, just really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and color all those up, and then I will quickly move forward here. You can see that I've got it all colored, and I'm going to be using my stitched rectangle die to cut that out. That's one of my favorite dies. I use it quite a bit. There's some basics that you need for your dies, and I think rectangles, squares, circles, those are always important ones. I'll link to some different ones in my blog if you want to check them out. I love this drink, What Makes You Happy with Friends Who Make You Laugh. Now, I couldn't find a stamp that said that, so I actually printed that out on my printer with just onto some vellum, and then I'll be using this kind of a scalloped die to cut that out. And I'm going to layer it on top. And I didn't mention it, but I did go around the images with a C3 just to give them some shadow. And then I'm also going to add this highlighting with a gel pen, just kind of here and there on the cups and within the tea there, just to give it some highlights that will show through that vellum. And then I have a cool little brad that I kind of think looks like steam from the coffee there. So I started by I was going to adhere that down, and then I remembered I wanted to actually use that brad. So I'm going to get in my paper piercer here, and I will line this up, and I want the brad to go on top of the cup to make it look like that is steam kind of coming out of the cup there. So I'll just kind of eyeball where I want that hole to be, and I'll pierce it. And then this will make putting the brad through there a lot easier. I just kind of like that little embellishment. It added some interest to the card. So now that I have that done, I'll go ahead and adhere that to the panel, which is an A2 size panel. Again, just bringing in some of that brown color from the tea there. And I'll adhere this to my standard A2 card base, side folding. And then because the vellum kind of folds up from being in my printer, I decided I would add some little kind of half pearls, some iridescent pearls. And I think I got those from, where did I get those? I got those from AliExpress, I think, is where I got those. So I'm just going to use my Gina K Connect glue here, and I put a dab underneath the vellum, and then I will adhere that little half pearl there, that iridescent pearl, on top of that glue mark. So it'll hold down the vellum so it doesn't fold up, and then I can embellish it with these little pearls here. So once I get that done, just using my Gina K Connect glue and my jewel picker here to get those put on there. And the pearls themselves really kind of pick up the different colors of the like greens and some pinks in there, and I think it turned out really pretty. So that's the first card, just really simple for our Some Like It Hot blog hop. And then here you can see the finished card. Again, I love that saying. If any stamp makers out there want to make this stamp for me with that sentiment, I'd really love that. So on to our next card here. I'm using the Cardabella Jet Wing stencil, and I will be using the texture paste from Ranger, and I just adhere that or apply that onto a card base and let it dry. I kind of skipped that portion showing you because this video is going to be long enough as it is. Now I'm just using my Ranger blending brush and some antique linen, and I'm going to add some color on top of that texture paste. I really like how this turned out. I haven't done a lot of texture paste projects, but it was a lot of fun and I really liked how it turned out, so I think I'll be doing more of those in the future. So again, just laying down the distress ink here, that antique linen, on top of the texture paste. I like how it takes the color. It takes a bit to get it blended to the depth of color that I wanted, so it does take a bit of time, but fast forward it here for you. And then once I get it to the shade that I like, I will be trimming down this panel. I want this to kind of look like wallpaper in the background of my next card here. So just using my Fiskars trimmer, go along there and trim it down. I think it ends up being about a 4 by 4 and an 8, I think is what it ends up being. So I'll adhere that to my, again, standard A2 size card panel. This time I chose a pink cardstock. And I'll apply that to the top portion of the panel. I want to create a bit of a table scene here. So the next thing I'm going to do is use this intricate kind of doily die, and I cut that out of white cardstock, and I'll use my craft pick here just to push out all those little intricate pieces. And I'll fast forward it because it does take me a bit of time to go through all that, but it's so worth it. Look at this. Look how that turned out. It's so delicate, so pretty. And I'm going to be using this to look like a crocheted kind of tablecloth. So once I get all those tiny pieces pushed out, I'm going to trim it down. But first I wanted kind of a tabletop. So really simple, just using some brown cardstock here. I could have even brought in some distress ink to darken up the edges, some brown distress ink to give it a little more depth, but I just really went simple with this card. So just really trimming it down to resemble the side of a table or a tabletop. And I will adhere that down. Now, because it's going on top of that texture paste, you do want to use a liquid glue for that. So I'll trim this doily piece in half with my trimmer. And then you can kind of see how I lay it out there. It kind of resembles that tablecloth hanging over the edge of a table. Again, you'll want to use a liquid adhesive because of the texture of that background piece. So using my Gina K Connect glue, and just lining that up to that textured panel. And doing the doily is a little more intricate. There's not a lot of places to put the adhesive, but wherever I put it, it does adhere really well with this type of glue. I will actually also put an acrylic block over top of this as it dries, just to kind of weight it down to make sure it does adhere to the other paper. So I'll go ahead and using my tweezers here, which is an important tool for me to get it lined up. And then applying that acrylic block on top and just setting it aside to dry. So now I'm going to move on to the stamped images. And this is another Lawn Fawn set. It's the Best Pun Ever set. I really like this set. It's so cute. Lots of great little sayings in it, lots of great little images. And I'm going to be using the teapot and the teacup as well as one of the heart images. And then I'll also be using Memento black ink for this as well, because I will continue to do with some Copic coloring. Now, I don't think I listed the Copic colors on this one. Don't get hung up on what I use. I always say that. Choose colors that you like and experiment. Sometimes I find if we watch someone make something, we try to exactly replicate it, and take some creative license and use some colors that you like. Of course, it's always a compliment when someone does an exact replica of your work, but try and choose something that works for you. I kind of went for brighter and happier colors. So I'm going to start off with these yellows. I believe they were, I had a Y02, I think a Y05 and Y08 for this teapot. So again, just laying down the lightest color, bringing in the next darkest to shade it in, and then back out to the lightest color for blending. Again, I'll always use it as a disclaimer, I am not the best Copic colorer in the world. I'm still practicing and learning. But I think that's with any craft that we do. I don't think we ever are complete experts. We're always constantly learning new techniques and trying them out, figuring out what works best for us. So adding a little bit of shading to this teapot, giving it a bit of a highlight there in the middle. Most of my Copic coloring is fairly simple in nature. I don't get too crazy or carried away. And that Y15 there, just for the top and edge of the teapots. And bringing in some pink here for the teacup. I can't even remember what I used. It's probably an RV 32 if I had to guess. But just a quick coloring here. Giving it another darker shade just to give it a little bit of dimension and interest. And then for the heart, it'll just be really, really simple. Just one color of the red there. You can use anything you like to color these in, if you have pencil crayons or any other markers that you like. I'll be bringing in this white gel pen just to add some dots to that teapot, as well as some highlights to the teacup and the heart. Now I used a stitched circle die here. I'll link to one in the description box below, and then I just cut a bit off the bottom. Again, you'll want to put a block on this and set it aside to dry. I didn't. I was a little impatient. I wanted to get my images glued down onto here, or get my sentiment stamped on there. And I could have stamped the sentiment before I glued it on. I kind of forgot about that, in all honesty. But I'll lay everything out here, and the sentiment I'm using is "You're Terrific." And I'll be stamping this with, I believe it's VersaFine I'm using. Yes. This is probably my favorite ink to use if I'm not doing Copic coloring. You can use the VersaFine if you Copic color, but you really, really have to let it dry, like almost overnight, so it doesn't smear and smudge. Again, using the Gina K Connect glue here to adhere these elements down. And I'll bring in that little heart, and I'm going to put it right on top of the teapot. And you can see that my circle there isn't glued down tight, so I'll have to re-glue it and put the acrylic block on it. But I wanted to get the little steam stamped on here, and then I can set everything aside. This is just a really simple card that you can use for birthday or thank you. It's always nice to have those kind of cards on hand that can be universal for anything that kind of pops up. And this is kind of one of those. So now I'll adhere this panel down to the front of my A2 card. Again, it's a side folding card. And I decided I wanted to add some glossy accents over top of that heart. And just kind of taking out the bubbles. Now what that will do is it'll actually remove that gel pen highlight. That's okay. Once it dries, I'll go back in and put it in. These little sequins, they're actually like little flower sequins. They're so cute. I think we just got them at the dollar store. Again, I'm kind of a fan of picking some embellishments up pretty cheap. So there you can see that it's that glossy accents has dried, and I'll bring in that gel highlight again. And those embellishments were all put down with glossy accents as well, just to give it that clear look once it dries. And that really finishes off this card. Nothing too in-depth and hard here, just a simple card that you can have on hand if someone's celebrating a birthday or to say thank you. And I really love the texture of that background. So as always, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Please go ahead and check out those blogs that I posted below, as well as some of these other videos. I really thank you for all your shares, your likes and comments. I appreciate that. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can keep in touch with everything that I'm doing. Enjoy your day, guys, and we will talk to you soon.